Welcome to the English Homemaker podcast, a podcast where we discuss all things home. A realistic but fresh view of homemaking from the suburbs of the south of England. I'm your host, Alissa Evelyn. Welcome to episode 24 of the English Homemaker. Hello everybody, how are you today? I am in a glorious state of disarray, and that's what I'm going to call this podcast because there is no more apt of a phrase. I'm happy, but everything is a mess. And we're in the middle of a kind of home renovation project. And I couldn't be more pleased that it's happening, but it is total chaos. So I'm going to save all the details for a YouTube video. So if you want to know what's been going on, those are going to be in the YouTube video. And you can see it all. You can see the progress shots. You can see what we've been up to. So I don't know when I'll get that up, but I will endeavour to do so because otherwise, I think this whole podcast could turn out to be incredibly depressing and long and me talking about home renovations. So let me give you the lowdown on what's been going on. So we have been updating the bathroom. So our family bathroom was from the 90s. It was this sort of like not nice grey colour, had a dodgy corner spa bath that I don't know how many people have bathed in, and a pebble kind of blind and some funky cream tiles. Anyway, that has all gone. We have a lovely new bathroom and it's almost done with these lovely Japandi, what we're calling them, like kind of wood tile panels that everybody seems to really love, including the fitter, which was really good. A lovely, just regular white bathtub. Brushed brass fixtures everywhere, this lovely hexagonal tile on the floor, metro blue, deep blue tiles, and a round mirror. And it's all looking really pretty. And I'm super happy, but it's taken a couple of months of not having a bath and having our lovely friend plumber guy come here for like 3 days a week, every other week, basically, sort of to fit us in around other projects and make sure we have a good price for the whole thing at the same time. And then at the same time, we've been moving bedrooms around as well. So I realised a couple of months ago that, well, a few months more than that, I suppose, the functionality of our spaces wasn't really working for what we were going to need going forwards. And so we have basically moved almost everybody's room around apart from our own. So both kids have moved to a different bedroom. What we had was a playroom. Now we've kind of moved all those toys up to where guests sleep. And now that's kind of like a playroom, guest room space. And then both computers are now in the same room as well. So we've got this kind of like office space. My craft room, beauty that was, is now more of a kind of corner of a room. And I've had to like downsize all of my craft supplies, which is not a problem because I just expanded to fit the space I had and I really relished it and I love crafting, but I certainly didn't need as much stuff as I had. So it's been a lot. Some of the wise things that we have done is at the beginning of when we realized we needed to move things around the house, like big things like beds and wardrobes and things. I think it was my husband realized we could just get our old movers in. So when we moved into this house, the guy said, oh, if you ever have like a piece of furniture that needs moving, I'll come and move it for you. I'll give you a really good price. And he did give us a really good price. So he sent a couple of people for about 3 hours. And in that time frame was able to break down or dismantle most of the beds and then rebuild them in the room they needed to be in because our house is an English house. So it's not really made for moving furniture around. You keep the furniture in the room that you make the furniture in. It's quite difficult to get it out the narrow doors. So that was a really wise, sensible decision for everybody's sanity, and I think was cost versus sanity versus physical strength and emotional capacity was a really sensible idea. The other thing that's actually been super useful that I think fits both mine and my husband's personality very well, because we are quite slow to make decisions, is that both the plumber / bathroom fitter and the painter / decorator, they do kind of 1 week on, 1 week off. So that's been actually very, very helpful to mean it's not felt like it's too much all at once, to mean that there's time for things to go wrong and to be fixed. And for there's time for everyone to do like a little bit of breather, for things to dry, for us to be able to see things and sit in things and make sure that we're doing the right thing. And that's been really, really helpful. Frustrating at times, but that's like mild in comparison to how helpful that has been. Because I think other people have come into the house and been like, oh, it's still not done yet. And I'm like, yeah, that's because they work about every 3 days for like 3 days every other week. So it's taking like 4 or 5 times as long as I think a kind of more structured project would. But I do like it that way. It also means then we can kind of space out the payments for things, which is helpful. And yeah, it mostly is really helpful because everyone gets a little bit of a break and a little time for their brain to kind of recuperate and check what's going on. And also, for instance, there was a moment where I realised that before painting our bedroom, we were going to need to get some electrics done. And there are just so many things that when you're doing a project, unless you are a project manager and that is your job, there are so many little finer details that you just don't think about until they happen. And you think, oh, I didn't even think that was like a bit that I would need to make a decision on. But okay. So yeah, like we had to order a new doorstop, of course, because the door was otherwise going to hit the bathtub. So then we had to work out which doorstop we were going to get from which company and what. At least we know the colour because everything in the bathroom is brushed brass. But then we had to find one that was really well made and didn't look tacky and was also going to function beautifully for a really long time. And thankfully, those aren't too expensive. But then we had to wait for it to arrive. So there's so many little details that I'm not a great project manager. It's not my thing. I don't do it all the time. So I don't see all the finer details. Anyway, so the current chaos of the house looks like we have books everywhere in the office room where I'm currently sat recording this. There are stacks of books and old files that need going through by my husband. And behind me, there's a huge amount of craft supplies that I need to organise through. Both of those things have come, that they've sort of had to come ahead of schedule, partly by things breaking. So the books are all on the floor because the shelf unit that was attached to the wall, that we did not attach to the wall ourselves, started to bow away from the wall. So we had to take all the books off, and thankfully my husband has refixed it. But I didn't want to put those books back on because that's going to be where I put my craft supplies going forwards. So, but I don't have time to organise them. So everything's just sort of on the floor. And then in the room adjacent, which is the kind of playroom area, is all of my son's extra stuff that wouldn't fit into the other spare room where he's currently sleeping because his bedroom is being painted. So you can just about get in there to put some laundry out, just about. And it fits 2 of the big drying racks and they are out almost the entire time in that room at the minute. So the kids aren't really able to play up there, which is a bit of an annoyance for them, but they're doing really, really well. I mean, they're almost 9 and 5. So they've got plenty of other things that they can keep themselves entertained with anyway. And then our bedroom is sort of halfway done. So yesterday, I think it was, we had our decorator fill some of the holes that were left by the electrician. And then I've been somewhere this week to a wood flooring company to ask them for quotes. And so because about a month ago, my husband took down, there was a big surround in our bedroom, which was around the bed area, like a built-in kind of thing. He's taken that down, which is something I've been dreaming about for the whole time we've lived here, good 6 years. And that's finally down. But then of course that's left like patches on the floor and in the carpet, and it's sort of super obvious that when we will be painting and decorating in there before we get the floor, because we can't afford to do the floor yet because everybody's quoting us like £2,000, which is astronomically more than I think we thought we were going to pay. So then my daughter's room is kind of done, but she is quite a messy person anyway, bless her. She's got sort of stuff all over the bedroom, even though the bedroom is mostly done. There are still a few things in there that need fixing. So like her little clock thing is standing on like a random box on another random box on a stool so that she can see it, because we haven't organised where that's going to go. She's got her old lamp in there, which super doesn't go, and she doesn't have any curtains or blinds at her window. She does have like these little shuttery things in the windows. Oh, so there's still things to do in there. And then we haven't sorted the light fixture that's hanging from the ceiling in there. And we haven't got hooks with the back of the door. There's just all these little finer details that are going to take probably another couple of years to organise what we want for some of those things, because I'm hoping to get some of those second hand, and then that takes a long time. And then, as I said, the bathroom is nearly done. So we've got a couple, I think just one more day maybe of painting in there. And then that will be done. And then we've got one more day of, there's like a funky trim on the carpet outside. And then we've got to put the door stop in. And then I've got to pick a blind for that bed, for the room as well. And then obviously my son's room is being painted, so that's sort of full of stuff. I've got to buy a wardrobe for that bedroom, which again, I'm hoping to get a really lovely big second-hand one. And that will be quite fun, getting that into that space. I haven't thought that one all the way through. And then the big disaster happened a couple of days ago. In our kitchen, I've got all of my glasses and mugs on my dining room table because the cabinet that was holding them to the wall started to come away from that wall as well. I don't know if it's like, we had quite a lot of drilling work done into brick when the electrician was there. I don't know if that just sort of loosened a bunch of things that were slightly faulty, because to have two things fail in one go, I don't know. It did feel a little bit like there was a tiny earthquake in the house when the guy was drilling the wall, but I hadn't really thought to check all my shelving. So the glass cabinet was starting to come away from the wall like a sort of inch and a half from the top bit, slightly at an angle. Thankfully, my husband spotted it. We got all the glasses and mugs out before anything desperately terrible happened. But yeah, so I haven't had a dining room table for a few days, and we have got a handyman coming later today who I'm hoping can fix it. I did have the plumber guy help me take it off the wall in bits, in stages, and so I knew which fixings I needed to purchase, so I went and purchased those from Amazon because it was the only place that did them anymore. So I'm hoping the guy today can just screw the fixings back in and put the whole thing back up again, but I somehow think it's going to be a bit more complicated than that, because most things do seem to be a bit more complicated than I think they're going to be. So yeah, that's the sort of chaos we're living in. The living room is actually looking pretty good, other than we've got a few extra bits of furniture that are in there, so they're not in our bedroom, so that the painter decorator can get all the way around in there. But we have got 2 new sofas in there, and it feels really lovely. One of them is this little like cute stripy snuggle chair, and it's next to a new bookcase that we put in there so that we can read on the snuggle chair by the fire, and all my dreams will come true. It feels really, really, really good to make progress finally. I was really stumped with how to make the house work better for us as a family for such a long time. And I don't know if it was, when we moved here, I got pregnant, and then obviously a newborn, and then COVID. So I think there was just just a little bit of like mum brain in there and COVID brain. I just wasn't able to visualize how to make it work any better. And actually back in the summer, I had my lovely friend Lizzie, who's been on the podcast. She came, and it was so funny because she was coming to the house. I could see the house in a different way, could sort of see it through her eyes, and I had some really good clarity on how it could look and its potential. But then also, I think just the longer you're in a space, the better you get to know it, the better you work out where you're treading, where you're moving around, and how you're using the spaces and how you could use them differently. I think also all the chat about permaculture isn't new to me. It's been going on in my head for quite a long time. And you will notice from those few episodes, that whole observe and interact, a lot about how permaculture is and what it's talking about, especially to the homemaker, is about just increasing the functionality of the spaces you already have, keeping your stuff to a minimum, but making sure what you have is beautiful and works really, really well for you. So, and your family, or whatever situation you're in. And I think I just worked out that we were just sort of like, it was like we were like throwing solutions at a big board, and they weren't landing in the way that they needed to, and that we just needed to do certain things slightly differently, like having the bookcase by the fireplace. So instead of me sitting down of an evening and thinking, oh, I wish I had all my books down here rather than all the way up the top of the stairs, and a really nice cozy place with a load of blankets. So my kids even actually, they decided that we needed a blanket box at the bottom of the bookshelf. So we've got a little blanket box at the bottom of the bookshelf, so that if anyone needs a blanket to read a book with, then there's one right there. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And I also worked out, I traipse up and downstairs for the sewing machine all the time, so that's now downstairs, and all my rag rug making things, they're all downstairs as well. So certain things just needed to function a bit better, and those are really small examples, but that is through lots of observe and interact, trying to make the life I want to lead and want to show my children easier with fewer excuses. And then I'm being intentional with my time and just making things easier for myself. And I think any time I've ever done that in my space, in my home, thought through things, maybe also like add in a little bit of minimalism in there, I think we could probably throw that in at this point. Anytime I've gone through something, worked out what am I going to use, why am I holding on to these things, and gotten rid of things. Anytime I do a wardrobe audit, for example, it's the same. You learn to streamline, you learn why you do things, and you are able to let go of things. I mean, I find that tremendously difficult, and that's why I'm surrounded by so much clutter right now, because we are definitely a kind of, oh, we spent money on that and it might come in useful one day. And especially with craft things, I mean, you can turn anything into something beautiful. So to want to have to or want to get rid of things can be really tricky. So, but I do find it very, very wonderful when I do. So I've really streamlined all my beauty supplies. I have sort of one thing for everything, and it's in such a small space, and I so prefer it that way. It's streamlined, it works beautifully, and my skin has never been better, and I feel fabulous. If you are after a little bit of a fix, one of the quickest things that you can do is go through your pen drawer. I did this the other day. I was just desperate for feeling like I'd accomplished something. So I took all the pens out the pen drawer, and somehow we just like attract pens. I don't know, we get given them for free or something. They just arrive in our house, and the pen drawer was just getting difficult to shut. So I took all the pens out of the pen drawer. I got rid of anything that didn't have a lid or wasn't like a clicky in and out biro kind of thing. And then I checked every single one that they were working and did a little squiggle, obviously, on a big piece of paper that my kids were like, what on earth were you doing, mummy? Later. And there are significantly fewer. I'd say probably about a quarter of the pens are now back in the drawer, because just some of them just were like kind of, not like bad vibes pens, but just like they just didn't need to be there. So I just wanted pens that made me feel good. Like, you know how pens have like little sayings on, or they belong to something. There was one in there that was from a casino. I don't even know who's been to a casino or when. So that one went in a bin. And just things like that, you just don't know. Lots of them are advertising, and it's funny how you sort of let those things in because they're free, but you certainly don't need hundreds of them. So I think I kept about 15 pens, and I'm sure it will get to be full again in about 5 years' time, and I'll have to do exactly the same process. But it felt really good. It was a nice, fast, easy win. And then I did the same with my wool. So my craft drawers, I've got 2 big drawers full of wool. And actually, I didn't go through really to get rid of anything, but I went through to organize it, and it felt so good because there were 3 big like spider webs of wool, and I spent probably 2 hours turning them into balls that were functional, because then I could go on to the next stage of making the decision of which ones were useful for making into something and which ones I was realistically never going to use. So I have yet to do that process, but now they're in balls, I can kind of at least see what I've got. And they're kind of more sectioned off, so I can then go back again and do the harder job, which is to work out which ones I spent money on, so I could probably try and sell them or give them to a friend, or yes, it's so difficult. Accumulating stuff is something that we do so easy in 2024. It just is easy. You can have whatever you like pretty much the following day, and you could put it on credit, pay for it. Like there's no end to the ways you can just accumulate stuff. And then if we add in sort of like birthdays and Christmases and charity shops, then yeah, it's just so very, very, very easy to get more and more stuff. And I do notice that the less stuff and the more organized things are, the better everybody feels and functions. Because I can tell you right now, the house is not functioning properly because there's just stuff everywhere, and I know it's going to take several months really to make the decisions and wade through things. One of the things I actually found really, really easy in all of the moving that I thought was going to be very tricky was the toys. So I had to go through the toys, the kids' toys, and move them upstairs, which was a considerably smaller space, and I was sort of happy to do that because I was like, if the toys don't fit in this space, we just do have too many toys, and quite frankly they don't play with most of them. They've done fine for the last few weeks without playing with them, and that's partly also because we haven't really had guests here, and my kids, they each have a small amount of their favorite toys in their bedrooms anyway, so these are just toys we rotate in. But it was so easy to just be like, actually, they never really play with that, so that can be donated or given away or whatever. That it was actually remarkably easy to move those things around and reorganize those. And I do find things more, because I can see it from a distance, and I know they won't miss certain things because they don't play with them. Whereas for me, if I'm doing something like my own craft things, which would be the same for them, if they would think, oh, well, I might play with that once, but if I get rid of it, they won't even miss it. And it's the same for me in reverse. If someone else was to look at my craft stuff and say, well, actually, Alissa, you don't really ever use that. And maybe that's a question to ask myself as I'm going through it in the next few weeks, months. Just to say, well, am I actually ever realistically using it? Or have I got like about 10 times the amount that I need of something? And we've got a fabulous craft scrap store that I can go and donate to, and they'd be super happy for a bunch of the stuff that I don't use all the time. And then if I really wanted it, it's probably in the scrap store, not the same thing, but something very similar for very, very cheap. So I do need to think about that. Maybe I need to think about it that way. Like, if my husband was looking at this, would he say, but I've never seen you use that? Or is it something that the kids would be devastated if I got rid of? Like, they love all of my I've got like paper cutters that cut different shapes. They love those. And I love those, and they have lots of purposes. So there's no way I could ever get rid of those. But then I've got like loads of scrap junk paper to make junk journals and do junk journaling, but I've just got way too much. Anyway, I am inspired by minimalism, but I'm definitely not a minimalist. But I think I'm inspired by all the teachings of it and the understanding of the benefits of it to a point. So I think regular updating is really, really important. I've just gone through a phase with my wardrobe where I bought a whole bunch of new stuff and I changed over for the season, and I was like, oh, like some of the stuff is looking really worn out, and just I'm not sure, like maybe my personality's changed a bit. So I bought a few new things based on the things I really liked before. I watched this lovely video by Rajiv Surendra. Surprise, surprise, I always mention Rajiv's videos. He did one about his autumn wardrobe, and just, again, like I always say with him, the way he talks about things, he's so considered and thought through. And I had said in one of the podcasts with my brother, I think it was the first one of the two, that I really would love a wardrobe that was easier, more streamlined. I didn't have to think about it, because if things are just laid out in an obvious way that makes it easy, that you always look good, you feel good, they're going to function well, like life is just a bit easier. You know, like Alissa wears corduroy dresses with a wool tencel top underneath it, and then she will wear this kind of jacket on the top. And I guess I haven't found my this kind of jacket, but I know which base layers I like, which dresses I like and where they're from. I know which boots I like. So there are just a few more question marks in there, but not too many. And when I sat down and I worked that out, that felt really positive. And I think I've had a couple of years of taking photos of myself in my outfits at certain times of the year, which I find really, really helpful, because then whilst you might think it's a cool outfit, that photo enables you to remember how you actually felt in it and what you really, really looked like. Like, you might have felt like you looked cool, but actually you were really trying to be someone that wasn't really you. And that's kind of a nice thing about documenting. Anyway, I'm super going off on a tangent here. Do you remember in my last episode how I talked about like the world not being set up for doing things differently? Like, the world functions if you do things the same way as everybody else. Like, you want the same kind of shower, for example, or the same type of paint, or, you know, like it's okay if it's something that you can go and get off the store or from Amazon. But if you're outside the ordinary, you like something that's handmade, handcrafted, you want to know its provenance, like, it gets weedy. It gets really complicated. It's made difficult. And I mentioned that in the last episode because we were doing our zero waste week, and it was like pushing through mud. It was just so difficult to do things different, to not buy things in plastic just seemed very, very tricky. You know, at the end of that week, I did put things in the bin, but it was considerably less than normal. I'd say about a sixth of the amount I would normally put in the bin by the end of the week, which was good. And I could name everything that went in there. So it highlighted where we could change, and highlighted where we had already changed. And the things that we kept going from that were just simply pretty much the milk. The milk we are still getting from the really lovely milk place in glass jars, and I go and collect it on a Monday. And then if I need a top up, there's a place a bit closer, albeit it's not Jersey milk, and I just get a couple of litres from there. And that's really nice addition to my week. It feels really nice and personal and nice. It's just a nice feeling, as well as being gorgeous milk, and a very similar price to the supermarket, which is really, really great. And then the other thing we have kept for now, but I think I'll probably end up realising it's still really, really expensive and wonder why I'm doing it, is the Abel & Cole boxes, which are really lovely way, because it's impossible otherwise to get organic fruit and veg really not in plastic from a supermarket. It's basically almost impossible. So you can get your regular fruit and veg not in plastic, obviously, but if you want organic, it's likely to be in plastic. So the only way to do that really is to get something from Abel & Cole or from Riverford or a veg box scheme like that. And it is fantastic, but it is very expensive. But if you're smart about making sure you use everything in it, and you base your meals around that, then that can be very, very good. I think the hardest thing about being a homemaker doing renovations in 2024 is simply the bombardment of ideas and stuff and adverts and promises that you have to wade through in order to get to something that you like, that will work, that will last a long time. Because it is so complicated. It is made complicated. There's so many ideals that you could tether to. There's so many looks and people you might want to emulate, or, I mean, I don't know. It's a tricky world out there, and you might simply be like, my neighbour has her house like this and I want the same, and I know she shops at this place and this place. And we can do that now on the internet. We can go online and see a million different videos on YouTube of people telling you exactly where their furniture came from, how much it cost. Oh, here's a link. It's super easy and to look like me and feel successful. And there are so many layers and complexities there that I don't know that we have the time to delve into today. But I think being aware of it is both liberating and really confusing at first. And I think for anyone that's thinking that they want to change something about their house and do it slightly differently, or not buy everything from B&Q or Dunelm or IKEA, it's a challenge. It's a challenge to do things differently. It's a challenge to find the money to do things. I think both my husband and I have reasonable taste, I want to say, if I'm allowed to say that about myself. Like, we've got expensive taste. We know what is good quality, what good quality things look like, what they're made of, but we can't afford them at the rate that we'd like to. We can afford them, but slowly. And that's just because of the decision, I suppose, of me to be at home. And it can be really frustrating to see other people where both of them work, or maybe they've had a little bit of a leg up and their houses look really, really beautiful. I mean, most people I know have got houses that are kind of mostly done, partly because they just move in and they don't want to not live in a house that's done. And anyway, I think I'm going into some weeds here, but the point being that if you are someone out there who knows what good is, and I think a lot of us have had more exposure to high quality end things because of social media and more expensive things, that if you can't afford it, there's this just feeling of just frustration and impatience and even maybe shame in there. And it's just very messy. So when you move things around the house as well, you've got all these emotions, so many emotions attached to when you're moving things around, and you think, where things have been and where you bought them and how much they cost. And it's heavy, man. I think that's why I understand why certain people that are older just live in houses that they haven't changed for years and years and years, because it's weighty. And actually also some people are of a time where they actually just bought quality things that lasted really well. I mean, we have those weeds to go through now. We have things that you can buy in shops that just aren't going to last. They look nice, but they're not going to last. They're not going to stand the test of time, and they're not going to be worth reupholstering, and they're not going to be worth passing down to your children. And I'd like to have a different mindset about that, for my children's sake and my own in the long term, because I don't like replacing stuff. Like, we were the people, and I think I've said this probably in at least one, if not two other episodes, who bought like the really fancy Dualit toaster that costs 10 times as much as a regular toaster, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still like not crazy expensive, because we never wanted to buy another toaster again. And most people we know buy a toaster every couple of years, and it's a classic design and it works really well. And if ever anything breaks on it, it can go back to be fixed. And that's the sort of people we are. But being that sort of person requires a lot of thinking energy, a lot of money, a lot of time. So the projects yet to go in the house are our whole kitchen needs redoing, the whole thing. That was installed before we moved in, and it's not my cup of tea, but it functions just fine. So we keep it as it is for now. And I put back up the cupboard that I don't love, hopefully today, so that my glasses have somewhere safe and dust free to live in. And then we are, I want to say like almost there, but we'd like to replace quite a lot of the flooring over time as well, which again, that's not urgent, but we'll do bit by bit, like the living room floor and then the entranceway and the stairway and the bedrooms. And if it costs £2,000 to do one bedroom, which is our current quote, then it's going to take us a really long time to update all the floors. Then we have huge plans for the outside space, which we moved in and we did some updates to it, and I've got some lovely YouTube videos of my garden. But I would like to make it function more, because although it's beautiful, I'm really the only one that spends a lot of time in that space. So I'd like to really think about how to make the space function better. It's also a space where we could do a lot more. Like, we could have a lot more growing space if we reorganize the way things were. And we need a composter out there. I'd love to have a sauna in the garden. That's a huge dream of mine, to one day have like a proper Swedish sauna in the garden. And then we're looking at getting some solar panels. I'd love to get a chest freezer out in the garage. The garage itself needs a huge reorganization. I don't know if there's anybody out there who feels like they're done with their home, like it's done, like you aren't just in you have like your next thing you're supposed to do. I suppose even those people will still have times where the cabinets start to fall from the walls or the TV stops working anyway. So I suppose we all need to find a way to find joy and contentment with where we are at right now. That's the main takeaway I want you to have from this episode, is that whilst my house is in a state of disarray, I am still just so happy, so grateful, so blessed to be in this house, in this space. And whilst I might complain about several things about the house itself or the place that we live, the area we live, maybe I'd like to live in the countryside. Maybe I would like to have a bit bigger of a garden. I could sit in that discontent my whole life. And there are people that do that. There are people that go around moaning and being bitter and twisted. And generally the bitter and twisted comes from years and years of moaning and complaining. But I instead would like to choose the joyful route, because no matter where we are, no matter what the situation is, there's always a different way of looking at it. There's always a way that other people are looking at your life and thinking about it. And it really does us well to remember the positives that we have rather than the negatives. And I think that's got me through so many times in life. I know that's not everyone's natural way of thinking. I know for a lot of people that requires practice, but I think gratitude is itself a practice. So whether that's you spend some time journaling, do some gratitude journaling, whether that's you spend time praying at the table, being grateful for the things that you have, remembering the things that you've got in your life, whether that's safety or health or family, your home, your country, the weather, your meal, whatever that is, there's so many things that we can be grateful for. And the more we practice that throughout the day, from the beginning to the end, maybe do all of those things, the better we will sort of become and the more positive we will be. A real mindset shift for me happened when I realized that contentment and gratitude were actually the same thing. That the more gratitude you practice, the more content you are. And when I realized that very recently, actually, and I think I just really needed to be reminded of it, then just the better my life got, the more contentment I found. Because people that moan and complain and aren't grateful for the things they have and are always striving for more are always discontent and ungrateful people. So it's just they go hand in hand, and I think it does us all good to remember that. So that's it for today, folks. I hope that was interesting to you. If you want to see inside my house, do go check out my YouTube videos, subscribe over there so you get to know what the latest videos are. I don't put out videos all the time, but it's just a lovely way for me to keep some kind of visual diary entry for us as a family and as a home, as a person. It's so much fun to look back on those old videos and some of our family holiday videos and such. So go and subscribe over there and you can check out new content. The podcast is also on YouTube if that's somewhere that you like to sort of save things and watch things and play things from. What else do I have to say? I wrote down, I wanted to share with you to watch All Creatures Great and Small, which we are really late to the game on that one because they're, is it the 5th, 6th, 7th season? There's quite a few seasons. It's on Channel 5. And it is beautiful. It's about the life of James Herriot, is it the life of James Herriot? That's the character's name. He's a vet in Yorkshire. He's Scottish. And it's tremendously witty and gentle and beautiful. And there's not edge of the seat moments. It's not rude. It's not overly anything. It's just very relaxing. It's so relaxing. It's lovely with a cup of tea, or my husband has a whiskey, or it's just a really lovely thing at the end of the day. It's 45 minutes, which is a perfect length for parents before we all fall asleep. And it's just lovely. So go watch All Creatures Great and Small. I don't know where else you can watch that outside of the UK, but I suspect you can see it in a variety of places as you can these days. And I just hope you have a lovely rest of your day, whatever it is that you're doing. And I hope to catch up with you soon in a new episode. I'm hoping the next episode will be about Advent, which should be good timing because that's 2 weeks from today, will be just before December. So Do follow over on Instagram at the English Homemaker. I don't post lots, but I do send reminders when there are new episodes. And share this episode with a friend, or one of your favourite episodes with a friend, family member, colleague, someone you bump into that you haven't seen for ages. Or if you don't want to tell a real person, go and share it over on your stories on your Instagram or on a Facebook post. It would be lovely for other people to get to listen if you think they would enjoy it. Anyway, I am now extra waffling. Have a really lovely day. Thanks for listening. Bye.